So when you buy a new car, you'll find that the seat and steering wheel will have a bunch of different options and adjustments because one size never fits all, and motorbikes are exactly the same. Like, this bike can be bought from anyone from like 6'4" or taller down to like 5'5" or shorter. Um, so obviously the controls aren't going to be perfect or even close to ideal for some people, which is why it's important to be able to make adjustments that might involve new seats, lowering kit, all that kind of thing. So the levers on this bike are adjustable. What I mean is this brake lever here, brake pedal I should say, and the shift lever as well. The shift lever in particular is very easy to do, and in this video I'm just going to show you how to do both. I've noticed on the Facebook owners group and the forum there are people that either aren't aware you can do it or they don't know how. I also haven't found a video explaining how to do it on YouTube. I could only find one for the older Bonneville from like 2001. So it's the first thing I noticed when I first got on this bike and rode it. I felt that both the shifter and the brake pedal were just too low. And it was just a faff, particularly the shifter. I'd have to kind of take my foot entirely off the pedal to get it under to shift up. So the brake pedal isn't as much of an issue, but I still find my foot has to kind of overextend like quite a lot down like this to get any brake power. So for me anyway, everyone's different as I said, but for me both levers need lifting up. I've never measured exactly how much. I'd say about half an inch to an inch for both. Anyway, I've already done the shift lever, so let me just pull the bike out a little bit and I'll show you how easy that is. So I'm down by the shift lever here, and it's extremely simple because there's no kind of like connecting rod, there's no real linkage. The shifter bolts straight onto the input shaft. So if you can see here, you can't mess this up. You should be able to see this tiny dot here. So the factory setup, that dot right there is perfectly in line with this gap. That's how it's set from the factory. And you can see mine isn't. And you can see that the reason for that is this whole lever has been rotated up this way slightly. So to do that, literally undo this bolt. I can't remember the size, it might be a 10 or a 12 mil. You have to undo it completely and remove it, and then with a bit of jiggling this will come straight off, and then it's literally just a case of repositioning it where you want, making sure the splines all mate up properly and push it back on. It's as simple as that. So for me, I think I did one notch. It's hard to really tell. You do have to kind of jiggle it around a bit to get it to fit back on. A squirt of WD might help actually, but I'm pretty sure that's only one notch and that's all I needed, and it's so much more comfortable now. It's one of the best things I've done. It's just so much easier for me to slip my foot underneath. I don't have to take, I was kind of going like this, like completely off it and then dipping my foot down and coming up like that. Now I can do it as you would normally, just like this. So it's very easy. I think if you lift this up too much, when you shift up like this, you run the risk of hitting the case. So there's some oh, wind just blew the garage completely shut. So there's a fair amount of adjustment, but not infinite adjustment. So if after you've done this you're still having issues, you're going to need an aftermarket lever, or you could potentially try and bend this, but that's at your own risk. So that's as easy as it is. Just tighten that up to cruiser bra foot-pounds. Doesn't need to be insanely tight. I don't think I used any Loctite either, but you can see how that, well, yeah, I guess it could potentially hit the case, although it's still got a fair amount of wiggle room there, so, but yeah, it's extremely easy anyway. So anyway, as I said, I've already done it, so let's move on to the other side and we'll sort this brake pedal out, because that's too low as well. So here we are down by the brake pedal, and you can already see how low that is from the factory. It's just not comfortable for me. I find myself having to push down and I start to get brake pressure around here, which it just doesn't feel great. So I'm going to adjust this as well. As you can see, this does have a linkage, but it's completely hidden by this front sprocket cover. So I'm going to look at the chain there, it's still nice and clean. Anyway, so first thing we need to do is remove this bolt, and these two, and that should be it. I've never actually had this off, but it seems pretty straightforward. So let me get these off now and then I'll come back. So here is the front sprocket cover removed. I did actually find a small pebble in here. Oh, I think it kicks it out of the way. I'm going to clean this up before I do anything. You can see there's quite a bit of muck kind of build up. Not terrible though. I was expecting way worse than this, to be fair. But yeah, because I'm a bit OCD like that, I'm just going to grab a brush and a bit of 10% ACF 50 and clean this up, and then we'll go from there. For reference, it's an 8mm socket you need, and all the bolts are the same length, which keeps things very easy, so bear with. So that's cleaned up a little bit. Not going to go mental, because to be honest, it's a very difficult area to clean. Just smarten that up with a bit of Surfex 10%. So hopefully this will show you basically how the mechanism works. And if you listen for that tick, that's the brake light switch. If you can hear that. So that's probably going to need some adjustment, and you can see how much I'm depressing it until it clicks. Right there. So that's about ½ an inch. I'm not going to measure it, but that's basically what I'm going to aim for after the adjustment. So you can see there's a threaded rod just there. So, and then there's a lock nut just above it, if you can see there. And then there's a adjustment nut here as well. So there's your adjustment. There's not a huge amount, but there should be enough. There's no way I'm going to be able to loosen that off without breaking this. So this is the brake light switch. So what I'm going to do is unbolt this, and then we'll see how it looks. Here's the bolt removed, which was in that hole just there. And as you can see, here's your adjustment forward and back. So just make note of that. So let's take this off. And now we have way more access to get to these two bolts here. So the first bit you want to do is undo this kind of lock nut thing here. Technically both are lock nuts really, but just crack that loose and wind it up a little bit here. Next we need to remove this clip at the back here in order to pull this pin off, because there's no other way to access this to loosen it, because this bit of metal here is in the way. So let me just get that off. Probably have to do that off camera so we can use both hands and probably a pair of pliers. Can't really see what's behind it, but should be pretty easy. Bear with. So actually, if you can just see there, if you position it like this, you can actually use your finger to just pry open the top part of the pin there, and then it's just about to slide off, which I'll do off camera. You don't actually need any tools. It's not a fastener I've actually come across before. I'm more familiar with circlips and whatnot. So let me just pop that off a second. And that's what it looks like. So it goes on like this. So these bottom tabs slip under the ridge of the pin on the other end, and then you just kind of push it back on probably with a needle nose pliers if you need to, but that's the orientation it goes. Now I should be able to get this out like so. Plop that there, and now I'll be able to move this out of the way again. Now I'll be able to twist this whole thing and allow me to undo this locking nut here. Do you see that? So now I can actually get in there, or even just turning this is going to loosen it off. So I'll play around with it and see what works best for me. So having played around with it, the best way to do it is to back this lock nut as far back this way as you can, and then carefully reposition this, and then spin this entire thing, because that nut is captive there and you can't undo it anyway. So just rotate this entire piece. Obviously anti-clockwise is going to send this nut further down the thread, which in turn, when this pin is installed, it's going to push down on this arm, which in turn is going to lift this up. So hopefully that all makes sense. How it is right now with nothing connected to it is as high as it will go, and then I've adjusted it to round about there, but we'll see how it looks when it's all back together. And I'll have to take it out for a test ride, and if it's too high I'll make further adjustments. I've really not adjusted it much. I've not measured the distance on the threads between the nuts, but I can use my own video as reference going forward. You can see there's like 2.5, 3 threads free. So I'm just gonna do this back up, shove the pin back through, and shove the clevis pin back through. You could give that a dab of oil perhaps, but I'm not going to bother. Let's just see how it looks. So yeah, this clevis pin here, just get it in probably roughly that position and just push it on. You don't even need pliers or anything, just your own finger strength, maybe 2 fingers, how she likes it best. Yeah, just push down and that will seat itself without any oil or anything. Then just do up this lock nut here. So that gives you some idea of how much further down I've dropped it. Really not much, maybe about 3 threads worth. And that's how it looks from the side. And I can feel I'm starting to get brake pressure quite a bit earlier in the throw of the brake pedal, which is what I was looking for, but obviously the proof is in the pudding, i.e. riding it, which I'm not going to do at this video. This is more just to show you how the procedure is done. So next I need to loosely mount the brake light switch. So I'm just going to hook that on there. And then there's your mounting hole for that smaller bolt, and there's your adjustment there. So I'm just going to loosely put that bolt in right now. Actually, before I do that, I'll just show you how this micro switch actually works. So when the brake light is off, this tiny little button here is depressed at all times. When you push the brake pedal down, it lets go. So if you look here, how this mounts, basically that tiny micro switch back here is pressed up against this piece of metal, which keeps it fully depressed. So when you apply the brake, this moves forward, therefore releasing the switch, and that's what makes the brake light come on. I guess you would call it a push to make switch, I guess, or push to brake. I don't know, I can't remember. It's many years since I did D&T. Anyway, I'm blabbing, but as I showed before, here's your sideways adjustment on here. And if you actually look at the mounting hole for the bolt, just see how that has sideways movement as well. So you need to really fine tune it, which I'll do in a sec. In theory, I guess you could move this piece here forward and back using these two lock nuts, but I think that's more for more kind of major adjustments. I'm not really sure why you would need to do that, but let me just get this all lined up and bolted down perfectly. So sometimes there might be times where I rest my foot on here lightly, say that much, in which case I don't really want the brake light to come on. So really, as soon as it starts applying some brake pressure to the rear wheel, that's when I want the brake light to come on. Else you might find yourself riding the brake all the time, as in just resting your foot on it and the light is on at all times, which isn't good. So let me just get that dialed in. So that's about dialed in. So this brake switch is about in the middle of adjustment here. In the end, I did undo this bolt and this one in order to move this plate backwards and forth slightly, just to really dial in when the brake light comes on. So yeah, we can see this is lifted up now. I did play around with this and test sat on the bike as well, and I did find it was a little bit high initially, so I just lowered it a touch. And if we listen for that, as you can see, hopefully you can hear that, it comes on right as I start to apply a bit of brake pressure, which is what I wanted, because if I'm just resting my foot on here and it goes down a bit like that, I don't want the brake light to come on. So that feels good. I might just spray the whole lot with a bit of lubricating oil, because it's all quite dry back here, but maybe that's how it's meant to be. But yeah, all in all, it is quite fiddly, and you'll need to test sit on the bike and see how it feels to you. I'd say the shifter mechanism is like a 1 out of 10 difficulty. This is probably more like a 3. I mean, it's not difficult, it's just a bit fiddly, and you're dealing with very small adjustments just to get it exactly how you want it. So, but yeah, it's doable, and it already feels quite a bit nicer, but obviously when I take it out for a test ride, that will be the true deciding factor. And once you've done it once, you can get back in here very quickly and easily and make further adjustments if you need to. Just to make sure all of these are done up fairly tight when you're done, and make sure this clevis pin is popped in correctly, so it's not going to pop off and then you'll lose this otherwise. So yeah, time to just button everything back up, and we're good to go. Just some other things to note: if you've not cleaned this area before, it would be a good idea to do both, like get behind here and clean this front sprocket. And if you ever do get any rear brake light or just brake light issues in general, it's probably going to be down to this, because that micro switch is tiny, and I have read reports of it getting gunked up by chain oil and debris and stuff. This whole area gets quite filthy, so I can totally see how this tiny little switch could malfunction by getting jammed up with crud. So this would be suspect number 1 if I ever do get any brake light issues. So yeah, bear that in mind. But yeah, hope this helps. So at least now there's a video out there to show that it can be done and how it can be done. So yeah, cheers.